Today we're going to talk about comparisons, actually. We're going to talk about how you compare things to each other, and specifically when we have comparisons that involve some multiple of another. So we call them multiplication or multiplicative comparative comparisons. So these could be situations where we have 2 times as many or twice as many as something else, or we have 3 times as many as something else. So they're a multiple of another. So let's look at how we would approach a common problem such as this. So this is a situation. John has 3 times as many apples as Sally. How many apples does John have? Well, we want to do the same basic things we have done before when we start a problem. And that is look at clearly at what the problem is asking. How many apples does John have? So our answer is John has blank. We don't know how many apples. That's going to be what happens. John has, we already know it's some number of apples. We don't know what this number is, but that's what we're looking for through the course of the problem. So the second time we read the problem, then we can actually think about what's going on. We know we're talking about apples. We know we're talking about John and Sally. So we're going to start by sketching exactly what we know. So when I take this problem, and now I'm going to just quickly draw Sally and John. That's what I'm looking at. Sally and John are in this problem, and they are represented here. I'm going to use a rectangle to represent how many apples Sally has. Now, I know Sally doesn't have rectangles, don't necessarily represent apples, but a rectangle can be used to represent anything that we want it to. And if Sally has this rectangle representing her apples, then John has 3 of these rectangles representing his apples because he has 3 times as many. He has 3 times as many as Sally has. So he has 3 times as many, and I can label them 1, 2, and 3. So we can use variables, though, to represent Sally and John. And so if we look there, we'll look at these variables and see that Sally can be represented as S. That's what she has in her number of apples. And then if she has S, then John has S plus S plus S. 1, 2, 3 S's. Or John has 3 times S. And in math, we don't write this times, but between the coefficient, it's called, the number, the natural number, and the variable, we're writing 3 and S. So that means 3 times whatever S is. So 3S means exactly the same as 3 times S. So that's where we're at. So we know that this is the relationship between them if we write it as variables. Now, what if we find out how many apples Sally has? For example, what if Sally has 2 apples? Well, now I know then that Sally has 2 apples. So I'm going to show that here. Sally has 2 apples, and if Sally has 2 apples, then John has 2 and 2 and 2. He has 1, 2, 3 groups of 2. So he has 3 times 2, or 6 apples. 3 times 2 is equal to 6. That's how many apples he has. Now, S for Sally meaning 2, because if we find out Sally has a different number of apples, or if we're trying to figure out what possibilities we could have, that would be the case. So if Sally has 3 apples, then S would be equal to 3, and then John would have 3 plus 3 plus 3, or 3 times 3. So in this situation, I'll change this here. In this situation, John would have 3 times 3. 3S is equal to 3 times whatever S is. So this would be what John has. John has 3S. We can also change that for if the situation changes and Sally has 10 apples. I'm going to erase these here. If Sally has 10 apples, or maybe even she has more, maybe she even has 30 apples, our numbers can get really large. We're able to use them. So if Sally has 30 apples here, then John has 30 apples here. And you see, I didn't want to keep writing 30 apples, but I wrote the 30s so we could see them. 30 apples and 30 apples. And I see, oh, repeated addition. Yes, it's multiplication. My expression for that was J equals 3S. So when I substitute, I'm going to substitute here, and J is equal to whatever John has is going to be 3 times whatever Sally has, and in this case, she has 30. So John, in this case, 3 times 30 is 90. So John has 90 apples. So we can see that we can change what the variables are and our understanding of them in this picture, whether we're working with variables or whether we're working with actual numerical numbers that tell us exactly how many apples she has. The pictures represented help us to solve this problem as we work it out. So those are the pictures that I would recommend that we use when we're solving those problems numerically or for multiplication comparison. And hopefully that'll be a helpful tool.